a tiny bit of progress made consistently will add up surprisingly quickly. And it is because of exactly what you said. It is the momentum that we're continuing to get a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. The downside of it is we often forget how many of those little steps we took at any point in time. It's like, well, we haven't done anything. And it's like, no, look behind you here and let's talk about where we were.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. Momentum isn't an accident. And I think you need to hear that today more than any other time. It is something you create on purpose. As we close out the first quarter, because we are recording this in March, and so whatever year you're listening to this, just think your March brain here. As we close out the first quarter, today's episode is all about capturing what worked, addressing what didn't, and setting yourself up for a strong, intentional Q2. But I will add a little caveat and say, this is a great episode when you're wrapping up any quarter. It'll be a little bit different, right? Because seasons are different. But there does need to be some routine when it comes to moving from one quarter to the next. So Gwen, I have a hot take here. It's probably not a hot take to you, but I think it's a hot take to some people. And that is that momentum matters more than motivation. I think we're all waiting to get inspired, to feel motivated. And reality is that you're going to get much farther if you just build momentum, get started and keep going, than it is waiting for motivation to strike.
As you said, not a hot take for me, but I do think it's a hot take. I mean, I really do. And, it's one of the things that is so fundamental in all the work that we do with our clients is we talk about, I'm not worried about you getting 8,000 things done. I'm worried about you getting one thing done that's going to continue to move the needle the way that you need to move it beyond the other 8,000 things you also need to get done. Right? Because when you move, it's the thing we're so bad at numbers, in our heads, right? Because there's things that we think are big that we in our mind actually think are small, and there's things that are small that in our head we think are big.
Right.
all of that, right? But this is an example of a tiny bit of progress made consistently will add up surprisingly quickly, and it is because of exactly what you said. It is the momentum that we're continuing to get a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. The downside of it is we often forget how many of those little steps we took at any point in time. It's like, well, we haven't done anything. And it's like, no, look behind you here and let's talk about where we were.
Right.
And yeah, because we function in a quarter, which is 13 weeks, it's like maybe you only took 13 steps, but you took 13 steps. Yeah. And 13 steps, even, just if we're talking about human steps, 13 steps gets you a distance from another place, right? It doesn't get you across the world, doesn't get you across the country, but, it adds up. Bit by bit by bit. And so I think that's the piece that people miss is that momentum of doing something toward the bigger thing.
Right. Not something for the sake of doing something.
Right. Not something for activity.
Right.
But something for effectiveness. Right. Something toward that moving to really moving the needle really does make a huge impact. And often once you start seeing it, it's like the next, the first step is hard. The second step is usually kind of hard. The third step gets hard. And somewhere around, the fourth to the, 8th step, it's like, oh, I'm actually getting somewhere, which also then motivates us to go, to go that much further.
Right.
I mean, we've all, I'm guessing, maybe this isn't true. This may be my, daughter of a auto mechanics instructor thing coming out, but we've all been in a situation where we may have had to try to push a car,
Yeah, I've pushed a car.
Right. And it's really hard to get it started. But if it has the tiniest bit of momentum, right, if it's moving even the tiniest bit, you can really get it going, even if you're not particularly strong and, all of the other things. But when it's at a dead stop,
it takes 4 people.
It takes way more. And I've experienced this in my life, not recently, thank heaven. Yeah. But where both, like if there's 2 of you in the car, both of you have to push, but you leave the driver's side door open because as soon as it starts going, then you zip and jump into the driver's seat, because then the other person can keep it going.
Yep.
To, create whatever momentum, pop the clutch, do all the things, right?
Right. Pop the clutch.
I'm telling you, man,
taking me back, Gwen. Fun fact, you can't even rent a manual transmission car these days?
No, because most people don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got, we agree. Momentum matters more than motivation, and it matters more than motivation for all the reasons you've said.
Well, because motivation runs out. I mean, everyone has it's kind of like a decision meter. We all have a certain we have a certain amount of motivation and decisions that we can make every day. And there are things we need to be motivated for. Let's save it for that.
Right. Exactly. Like getting out of bed. I mean, like, who wants to get out of bed?
It was like you were in my head this morning. Huh?
Yeah. It was cold outside. It was cold outside this morning. I did not want to get out of bed. I was like, this is nice and cozy. Unfortunately, momentum. Yeah. I got out of bed yesterday. I'll get out of bed today. Guess what? I'm going to get out of bed tomorrow. That's just how it's going to roll. So, I also think that momentum brings confidence, like your every step forward.
Back to the progress. You're seeing that progress. Yeah.
So what I really want to address, though, is, at the end of a quarter, but let's just say this is all true. Like I said at the beginning, this is all going to be true at the end of every quarter. However, since we are recording this to drop at the end of Q1 in kind of a wonky year, after a wonky year. Yeah. I would like you to be a little specific on the Q1 examples. How do you recommend reviewing the last quarter realistically? Because that's something I think that you're really good at. Until I met you, all of the quarterly planning processes I had been were like goal setting in a vacuum, right? It's like thoughts are things. And if I believe and put 7-figure business on my vision board and look at it every single day, I will achieve it. Talk to me how I can realistically review my last quarter.
So, it has been a part of our, quarterly tune-up, our planning process that we've done with our clients now for years and years and years. And the review piece has always been the first piece. And it's for multiple reasons. Initially, part of it is entrepreneurs are horrible about acknowledging their wins. Right? We can list off the 18,000 things that went wrong.
Right.
Down to, the tiniest minutia of I broke a nail. But we'll ignore the fact that we cut $30,000 of expenses that didn't need to be spent, or these giant wins. It's like, I didn't do anything this quarter. It's like, I don't think that's true. Right.
My lowest revenue year ever.
It's all of those things. Right. So for me, that was where we started, was we need to look at the wins. But, if you've ever done anything around strength finders or, any of those kinds of tools, one of the other things they talk about is it's easier to build on our strengths than it is to fix our weaknesses. And the business kind of correlation of that is it's easier to replicate things that are working and or modify them slightly to work in a similar but slightly different environment than it is to keep starting from scratch with something new.
Right.
That we don't really know what the outcome will be, right? So the idea of review really is to say, where are our wins? Where do we have challenges? I'm not saying we don't ever look at where those challenges are because we don't know what to fix if we haven't actually, looked at the challenges. Right. But part of the wins is what can we take and replicate potentially to address the challenges that we're having instead of trying yet the next new hot thing, whatever it happens to be. Because often it's just yet another tool it's not always, but usually the tool is not the problem. Right. It's more about behaviors and processes and, lots of things that the tool can then supplement, but that's usually not the problem. And so that review process really is about saying, where are we? The other piece of it, which I think was the part you were getting to about, I'm going to put 7 figures on my vision board and it's magically going to happen, is to say, where are we? Like, where are we in the scheme of things? Where are we on the path, on the journey? However you want to define those words, because is it possible to have a $5,000 year and next year have a 7-figure business? Yes, it is, because we've seen some people do that from time to time. Mm-hmm. Is it likely? No, it is not likely. So understanding, what have you got? Where are you? What do you have in the way of finances? What do you have in the way of resources? What do you have in the way of contacts and network, all of those things. But that's a review process to understand, where are we now? Yeah. So that we're actually looking to move from this place, not from a place that we wish we were.
Right.
Right. I mean, and you talked about all the other goal setting, systems that you've been in. They missed that. What did that do for you when you realized that you were, what did you miss by not having the review? Because I know, like you said, when you started doing it with me, it was like, oh, that's different. So it's always been the way I've worked. So I don't know how to think about it by not doing it.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, right, is it's like, so first of all, I think a lot of these quarterly planning programs skip the review because they don't want, or they don't work in enough time to guide people through the discomfort that comes with talking about what didn't work, right? Because I think that's the thing, is everybody defaults to what didn't work. It's like, okay, what worked and why, what didn't and why. And then sometimes in a group situation, especially, you can just totally go off the rails as everybody piles on each other's what didn't work and why. And so what I have missed in the years by having these planning processes that were all forward thinking, one thing that I missed is understanding what average growth is. What is good growth, right? Because when you're constantly looking at 7 figures, you're a failure until you hit 7 figures. I mean, in my case, I was mainly shooting for 6 figures for years, but it took until I was working, I was observing a quarterly tune-up in my initial phase of working with you, where I was trying to do it with the clients just really quick, that I recognized that my business had been growing year over year. And any growth year over year is great. I mean, some growth is better than other growth, right? Right. Obviously, wouldn't we all love to double? I didn't know businesses didn't double year over year.
Right. And often, because back to the first year or two, it's pretty easy to double because the numbers are small.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I think that's the first thing, is I was missing so many opportunities for celebration in the journey along the way, because I didn't recognize that though I wasn't hitting the big target, I was going from 18,000 to 24,000 to 36,000, then a jump to 50,000. And then, it was like a 52, 54, and then it was a jump to 70 or 68. And then I had a 75, right? I missed all of that because it was like, well, it's not six figures. It's not six figures. So that's the first thing, is I missed that opportunity to celebrate the milestones along the way. I also, by not reflecting, missed out on bad decisions, things that were already not quite turning out how I thought, and probably could have pulled the plug on if I had been invited to explore those in a non-judgmental way. But I didn't, right? It was just like, oh, well, I need person A in place in order to get to that six figure. I'll never get to a six figure business by myself. I have to have a team. Like, I need to have a 3-person team or whatever. I'm going to keep hiring these people without evaluating, do I have the right people in the right seats? Am I taking like full advantage of having people in these seats? Am I a good boss to these good team members? Like, all of that. I missed all of that by not having the reflection process.
Well, and what you just said was also a bit of the last, is like, do I actually need 3 people in these seats now? Or am I prepping for, am I acting in a role that isn't anywhere close to the place that my reality is right this minute? Yeah. Right. Because that can be, very defeating in the big scheme of things.
Oh, very much. Well, and then going back to, and we'll link this episode in the show notes on this one, when we did the 5-3-1 together, it's been over a year now. My big goal for last year had been to hire a project manager, right? To manage the one-on-one clients. I didn't hire a project manager last year because I wasn't ready to hire a project manager. But in the conversation, I walked away understanding these are all the things that need to happen in my business in order for a project manager to make sense. And there was no point in time all of that was true last year. Now, a project manager, first of all, I thought the only thing standing in the way between me and a project manager before we did that exercise was money. What I recognized last year is my business was not in a place where anybody could come in and support me in project management. And my business likely won't be in a place for that for about 3 more months.
Which
maybe 6, but probably 3. But also, I don't feel badly about that. Why?
Right.
Because I have this process of looking back that I now am aware of, and I can see all the improvements I made in my business to get closer to being ready, that it's not about like, oh, boo-hoo, I didn't do this thing. And it was my goal, and I didn't achieve my goal. It was like, it was my goal, but I wasn't ready for that. There were other steps in advance that I hadn't that I had not yet taken. So I would say for me, there's a lot more, but I think most critically, when I think of how I could have been so much further ahead today than I am, if I had a process for really honest, non-judgmental, effective review, those I think are the biggest barriers to my growth.
Well, and the other thing that you said, and this actually probably is a good transition to the goals side of it, is one of the things that we believe, which is completely wrong, is that you're either good at setting goals or you're bad at setting goals. And when you don't hit a goal, that means you're bad at setting goals. And if you do, then you're good at setting goals. And it's like, that's not even, I don't know. It's so far off. I can't even give a framework for it. Goal setting is actually a skill, which means the first few times that we do it, we're probably going to suck. And it's not going to go well. But if you treat it like a skill and it's practice over time, and we've seen this with our clients, and I'm betting you're seeing it, for yourself as well, is that if you really start doing it in a consistent way over time, it usually takes, my experience is generally 3 to 6 quarters, because we do it quarterly, but about 3 to 6 rounds of doing it, getting feedback, making adjustments, doing it, getting feedback, making and the feedback being, did I get it or did I not get it? And making observations like you just gave. Those are great observations before you get pretty consistent about being able to actually set goals that you have a reasonably high probability of hitting, that are also still pushing you enough to be the place that you need to go. And that's where the balance is, because there's so many folks that will advocate, I'm going to keep going back to I said 7 figures on my vision board, that's 7 figures, that's what I need to do, right? It's like, but is that actually realistic? I mean, I love having a big goal somewhere in there. But when we set that, what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up to say, yep, failed again. Yep, failed again. Yep, failed again. And, nobody likes that. I mean, I don't know one person that finds that actually motivating.
Yeah.
So I think that's, the other piece of it is to understand that the review process helps you actually develop a skill in setting goals.
Yeah.
If you're not doing the review, you're not able to actually learn from the process to do better the next time.
Yeah, that's well said. And what that makes me want to do, because I want to move into how you turn that review into a plan.
Yep.
In this case, into a Q2 plan, but into a plan for the next quarter. But before we go there, I do think we need to have just a little bit more instruction on how to set a goal. And so something that I hadn't actually heard you articulate, but at our last quarterly planning session, you articulated, which I would love for you to do that for our listeners, is, you always talk about good, better, best goals, but you actually spent some time in defining like the metrics for what a good goal is, a better goal, and a best goal. If you don't remember what those were, I will happily remind you, but I think you might in terms of how often you hit them.
Yeah.
So lay that out for us so we all can have the same definition, the same working definition of what a good goal is.
The first time I ever heard the term good, better, best, I heard from Todd Herman when I was doing a 90-day year process. I don't think they put metrics around them. I think I ultimately decided to put some metrics around them because people still will set, they won't really use them in that way if we don't actually kind of say how often should we hit them. And so the idea of the good, better, best goal is the good goal is the goal. It's not really the best goal, like hidden. It's really the good goal. The good goal is the goal, which means we should be able to hit it about 85% of the time. So, 80 to 90% of the time, somewhere in there, we want to be able to hit that goal. But notice I didn't say 100% of the time. It's not a slam dunk. It's not a no-brainer. It's not of course I hit it. Duh. Right. It has to be something that we're still having to work toward, not something that we're going to be able to solve in the first 3 weeks of the quarter. Because then it's not truly a good goal. That's a slam dunk. Okay. Yeah. The better goal is if things have aligned and we actually hit our good goal and we still have space and time to keep up the momentum and get further, what's our good goal? I expect our better goal. Our better goal, I expect, is what I call a 50-50 goal.
Okay.
Right. That if, out of 12 quarters, it's possible we could hit it 6 times, but we're not going to beat ourselves up if we don't.
Right.
Right. It's still, a little iffy. Our best goal is the goal that kind of everything has to work. Everything has to be aligned. We are surprised that we hit our good goal. I'm making up numbers, but 6 weeks in, we actually get our better goal 9 weeks in. And because we've got this momentum that's like on this exponential curve, we're able to hit our best goal. And that really is like a 5 to 10% kind of time hit. It's what we typically think of as the BHAG, the big hairy audacious goal kind of thing, right? That the BHAG is not the good goal. It is the best goal. Yeah. And by setting those, it allows you to be thinking in that bigger space. And sometimes over time, not this quarter, but 4 quarters from now, the BHAG actually does become the good goal because over time, we have set the foundation up and up and up and up so that now that no longer really is a hairy, audacious goal. It's just the goal.
God. Yes. Okay. Thank you for walking us through that. Cause I know the first time I had been told of good, better, best goals, I was just told them as revenue numbers. First of all, there was no other way to set a goal than revenue. And it was good is a 10% growth, better is a 15% growth, and best is a 25% growth.
Which could be great. for a particular business.
Right.
But I don't have my mug here right now, but context matters.
Right.
That may or may not be appropriate context for somebody else. For somebody else, good may be 2% growth, better could be 5% growth, and best could be 10% growth.
Right. Or
it could be the other extreme, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what I really appreciated about that example was not so much the metrics, say, around it. It was the percentage of time you should hit it to help. I mean, it helped me. I know it helped everybody else in the room understand that even your good goal is not a slam dunk. Like, hello, COVID, right? That's a year. Right. Some people doubled their best goal because of the line of work they were in. And other people went back 10 years behind in their good goal, right? Not because they were failures, but just because, it was that little 15% of the time, 10 to 15%
right.
of the time.
It was the things out of their control.
Good goal. Yeah. The better goal, knowing that that's a 50-50 chance, I think totally reframes the goal setting. It's like, okay, so what do I have a 50-50 chance of hitting? Oh, okay, there's that. So then what is the reach goal? Because if you have a 50-50 chance of hitting 6 figures for the first time, I don't know that your best goal for the year should be 7 figures. Right. Maybe, depending on what your business model is, right? I mean, if you're hitting these by acquiring businesses, then you could potentially acquire that business. So thank you for that. I do not want to shortchange listeners in walking them through turning their findings into a Q2 plan. So how do you do it, Gwen?
So this is where most entrepreneurs stress out, and it's why our clients like doing it together and being guided, because we help them do the number one thing, which is focus, right? So focus is the hardest part of it. Because what we see is and what I need to do is this, and then I need this other thing, and this other thing, and then the other thing, and then, shiny object, over here, squirrel, and right? It's all the things, right? And so the key really for really working on the goals going forward is to say strategically, what is the thing that's going to make biggest impact in my business? And when we say that, not all the things that are going to make impact in the business, because there are undoubtedly dozens, if not possibly hundreds of things that could positively impact the business. But what is the most important thing to impact my business in the way that I'm doing it that is valid for what is important to me, that is in alignment, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of context matters in this piece as well, right? So where you're talking about, it's always revenue and it's these percentages, it could be revenue, but maybe it's not revenue. Maybe it's reducing expenses as a financial piece. It may be growing your client base. Maybe I've got 3 clients and I realize that's a little too few too many eggs in one basket kind of scenario, right? And it's no, what I actually want to do is I want to double the number of my clients. Right. But maybe that doesn't necessarily mean I'm changing my revenue.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It can be all sorts of things, but what is going to be most strategically important to the business? And limiting that, we say 1 to 3. We really try to keep our people to 1 or 2, because as soon as we start adding more and more and more and more, there's a lot of things. And as we look and talk about it and review, we also say, are these things related enough that you aren't running, in 3 completely different directions, right? It could be a marketing goal and a revenue goal. Well, those, you can see how those would tie together. It could be a operations efficiency goal with a cutting expenses goal. Those can run to, you can see how they would relate. But the key here is to say, I'm not going to try and do all the things. I'm going to try and do the few best things, right things for me where I am right now at this point in time. And that's hard. I mean, I'd love to say like that's a really easy thing to do. It's not. It's hard, particularly for most entrepreneurs, because back to there are 1,000 things that they can and want to do. But by doing that, that allows everything else to fall in place. It's not saying we're not going to do any of the, what I'm going to call normal work, right? This is what in my mind, I think of it as above and beyond. Mm-hmm. Right? If you're working a 40-hour week, hopefully you can get your regular work done in about 30 to 35 hours. And this is that last 5 hours.
Yeah.
Right. It's not 40 hours a week of work.
Right.
It's that piece that's actually making this more strategic move based on where we have our challenges, what we know has worked in the past. This is where the review piece comes in. Looking at the data of where we are, what's worked, where we have the challenges, and saying, what do we think will move the needle most significantly? Mm-hmm. And significantly can be defined in 1,000 ways. Right.
So I just want to give us a recap, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of shape a little bit more in terms of what people should be thinking about as they move into Q2. And then we'll wrap up and we'll leave them to taking the action. So, the review process that you actually walk people through, right? It's what worked and why, then what didn't and why. And one thing I love about you is you always make them spend twice as much time thinking about what did work and why than they do with what didn't work and why. So if you're doing this by yourself and you're setting a timer, you get 10 minutes to think about what did work and why, but you only get 5 to do the didn'ts. Because even in half the time, you'll still come up with twice as many things. That's just how our brains work. And we don't need pages and pages of our failures. What we need to do is focus on what worked and why. And then the third thing that you'll ask is what surprises emerged. Good surprises, bad surprises. You're always really good about saying that. Surprises go both ways. What needs clarification, right? And then in your quarterly planning process, you actually have them sleep on it after that. And then they come back the next day for the planning piece, because a lot happens overnight when you've had some time to think about it. It's hard to have our brains switch gears. Okay. We talked about your, kind of how you define good, better, best goals and how often you should reach a good goal versus a better goal versus a best goal. Won't rehash that. And then when it comes to turning those findings into the Q2 plan, what you just spent a lot of time talking about is the first thing you have to figure out is, are my priorities still my priorities? Right. Do I need to reset any? Do I need to rethink of any? Is something coming this year that may alter my priorities? An example I use with my own clients, a lot of my clients are women who are about, 10 years younger than you, Gwen. And so a lot of them are facing their kids are getting married phase of life or grandchildren phase of life, right? And so it's always like, if you've got a grandbaby coming or you've got an in-law coming and you are a woman, it automatically is knocking you out of your productivity for 6 months. Okay, I have seen this since I started. I've never seen it not do this. It just is what it is, right? Yep. Brides and kids lean a lot on their mamas. It's just how it works. So, you may have to reset your priorities for the coming year. There's a lot of other reasons why you may need to reset your priorities. From there, once you're clear on your priorities, then you go into allocating your resources. I think too often we go straight from goals to resource allocation. Then after we've allocated the resource, then we go, okay, what rhythms need to change? And I think you are particularly really good at helping people appreciate where even a subtle change in rhythm can lead to exponential outcomes after the course of 13 weeks, but even more so after 26. And then after that is when you start aligning your team. Again, I think too often people want to bring their team in right after they've set the goals. This is our goals for the new year, guys. Ready, set, go. And the team's like, wait, what? Because the team isn't clued into where our priorities have shifted, how the resources are being allocated, and where rhythms are shifting. Like all those decisions really do need to be made before you start bringing other people in on it. Where would you add additional clarity more?
Well, I was going to say, it's the why piece that, because we have spent so much time thinking about it, it's so clear to us all of the why. And it's the piece that we need to spend so much time actually working on with our people, is to make sure they understand the why. They understand why the priority changed. They understand, what's going on, and things like, I just found out that my daughter is going to have her first baby. And so I need to be able to be more flexible, particularly once we hit, August and September, because the baby is due sometime, in that framework, right? It's due September 1st, but we know some babies come early, some babies come late, they're all of the things, right?
They come when they want, whether you want them to
they
or
really
not.
do. That's their reality. And so being clear about what those whys are, right? And being explicit. Even though you say, my daughter's having a baby and so I'm going to need to change things, saying because what you're assuming is that everyone would understand why that matters to you and what that means to you. But, depending on where your daughter lives, how much time you're planning on being there. Some moms spend a lot of time with, new grandbabies. Some don't come until it's later because they have other people, there's all sorts of things. So don't assume that what seems so obvious to you is obvious to your team. That to me is one of the pieces that gets left a lot. Now, the thing particularly coming up for Q2, and one of the things that we've actually added into our quarterly tune-up is talking about what the natural energy of the world is. Now, this is, of course, is not true if you happen to be listening in the southern half of the hemisphere, right? But Q2 for us in the northern hemisphere is spring. And spring is when all things are growing and shooting and things are new and there's lots of growth energy. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Right. But you need to be aware of it, because often it means that it's going to be easier to get distracted by a lot of things. Yeah. Right. And saying, no, I want to manage that. Now, just because, we know podcasts are, hopefully forever, let's just talk briefly about what the other quarters are in case someone's listening in for another quarter, right?
I would love that.
Right. So as you're coming into Q3, where you're really at is you're coming into late summer, early fall. And so things are growing, but they're kind of starting to stabilize, and the growth has happened. But the other thing so you need to be prepared that this is when maintaining momentum is really useful for you, because it's easy for it to kind of just start to slow down a bit. And because of the growth from the spring, we feel like, oh my gosh, everything's a failure. Right. And it's like, no. Things have grown and done the thing that they need to do. But it's the place that you still need to be in support of it. The trees still have leaves on them. They still need to be watered. They still need that ongoing piece. As you move into the beginning of Q4, that's when you're really hitting true fall. Yeah. And that's when things are to be cut. Mm-hmm. It's when we trim back our trees. It's when the leaves are dropping off the trees. It's when all of those things are happening. So as you start thinking about the planning, what are the things that I've done, I've tried, that work, that didn't work, that I need to pull out to make space for the next round? And as we come into Q1, although we often think of it as the big planning for the year, it really is about the foundation, right? Yeah. It's about getting prepped. It's about the readiness. Right. As we're in winter, that's when most things are dormant or more dormant, depending on, including us. I don't know. We were talking about earlier, like staying in bed, being more dormant. Right. And so, but that's about setting the foundation. So that's when you want to be thinking about, what do I need to be prepared for in that spring growth, right? So they each kind of have their seasons, and being aware of them helps you know what are the things I need to watch for and or leverage because it'll be easier in this. Not that you can't do any of the other things in any of the other times, because that's not true. Like you can cut any time of year. You can, like you can do all of those things, but it will be easier. It will feel more natural in those time frames.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And of course, because you are the queen of saying context matters, you may have an industry that operates in a different bit of a cycle. So your data trumps everybody else's data every day of the week. Yep. However, I think, what this does though is gives everybody listening, no matter when they listen, an idea of what the average is and what they can expect.
Right.
So with that, Gwen, I just want to say thank you. Like we just wrapped up a whole quarterly planning retreat. We didn't mean to, but we just wrapped up a whole quarterly planning retreat in like under an hour. Like, look at us go. But what I want to say is, we've kind of walked through the whole planning piece, what to expect seasonally. The next step really goes on you as a leader, like to our listener. And, sort of to tie a bow around all of this, it really involves giving yourself the thinking time. Like review does not happen in, 5 minutes here and there between errands. Like it's concentrated thinking time. It happens. And then, setting those goals and having that plan requires an accountability process in place. It requires some strategic boundaries. When we talk about, how to allocate your resources, how to reset your priorities, how to reestablish your rhythms, all of those are based on having priorities or having boundaries that are strategic and maintained. And then consistent communication with your family. If you're struggling with like a work-life balance thing, consistent communication with your team. I would argue consistent communication with yourself is always a good idea. Sometimes I like to hide from myself. I don't know if I'm the only one. And, if you want any sort of help with that, a good place to start is simply by answering one good question every single week, right? Because if you want to build momentum all year long, it can start simply by elevating the way you think each week. And we believe here that most CEOs do not need more information in their life. They don't. They want it, but they don't need it. What they need are better questions that have them do these review processes and these thoughts on their priorities and their boundaries that they're not asked often. And to get that from us, and actually from Gwen, I just like to take ownership with Gwen over things.
She helps. Don't let her say that she's not a part of this.
I help sometimes. But you can get Gwen's really good question by going to everydayeffectiveness.com/question. It's free. You sign up there. It'll start the next Friday. If you choose to engage and respond to Gwen, you'll get a response from Gwen in turn. And then you'll start to see what that reciprocal reflection looks like. And you know what? After this is kind of, I think, almost our last episode of the quarter. We may have one more, but we'll see you soon. Can't wait to hear what you think. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.